The Supreme Court just ruled against a Colorado law that bans conversion therapy. It was overwhelming, an 8-1 ruling. The justices determined that Colorado's law, which censors certain conversations between clients and counselors based on their viewpoints, violates the free speech clause of the First Amendment. Now, this case was brought by a practicing Christian talk therapist who took on Colorado's law banning conversion therapy. It's a practice favored by many Christian conservatives, encouraging LGBTQ plus kids to either identify as heterosexual or, in the case of trans kids, to identify as the gender assigned to them at birth. Colorado's law banned that practice for licensed therapists. Let's bring in NBC News senior justice reporter Ryan Reilly for more on this decision. Ryan, good morning. So 8-1, that's, I think, surprising to a lot of people. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson was the only dissenting vote here. Walk us through the decision and sort of the issue at play here, because this really did focus on the First Amendment and speech.
Correct. And I think what's essential here is this is about talk therapy, right? This is not sort of about the majority opinion speaks to this being someone engaged in talk therapy. And what the plaintiff here said was that she doesn't predetermine any outcomes or force people into specific methods, but rather there's also no medical intervention, which is an important part, I think, of this overlying majority opinion, which, as you mentioned, 8-1 is, you don't get so many of those on the Supreme Court necessarily these days. But Ketanji Brown Jackson did file that dissenting opinion. The dissenting opinion is actually longer than the core opinion of the court. In this case, you have a 23-page opinion from the majority. You also have two of the justices, the more liberal justices, Justice Sonia Sotomayor and Justice Kagan, who filed the concurring opinion, agreeing with the majority opinion, but also making some distinctions and looking at some of the real details of the law. And then you have the dissenting opinion that says that, from Justice Jackson, that says that the concerns about the First Amendment can be overridden here. But what the majority is saying is that because this is about talk therapy, this is really talking about regulating speech. And so it doesn't necessarily strike down the whole law altogether, but it's talking as applied to how exactly this individual plaintiff in this case is using her talk therapy. And it talks especially about in the opinion, it says that she seeks to help them reach their stated objectives, and that that's what the majority is saying here, that because this is talk therapy, this is a core First Amendment issue.
This decision is perhaps not surprising to anyone who did listen to the oral arguments, but I think the big question people were wondering is just how broad or narrow this decision would be. We know there are more than 20 states out there that have banned the practice of conversion therapy. There's plenty of evidence out there that conversion therapy can be incredibly harmful to LGBTQ plus kids. So do we have an idea? Does it just apply to this case, or what's sort of the standard now moving forward when it comes to bans on conversion therapy?
Yeah, so the emphasis of the opinion is on as an applied opinion, right? So as it applies to this specific situation involving talk therapy. I think there are other parts of the law that the opinion talks about here that there is more of a basis for, and even the plaintiff in this case sort of acknowledged that there were legitimate state interest in regulating some of more of the medical interventions, especially when it comes to minors. But because this was a licensed therapist who dealt with talk therapy, and said that she wasn't necessarily leading people to a predetermined conclusion, that's sort of what the scope of this majority opinion is here.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app, or watch live on our YouTube channel.